Are the president's kids more important than yours? Then why is he skeptical about putting armed security in our schools when his kids are protected by armed guards at their school? Mr. Obama demands the wealthy pay their fair share of taxes, but he's just another elitist hypocrite when it comes to a fair share of security. Protection for their kids and gun-free zones for ours.
Now, what's worse than the NRA and their over-the-top reaction to President Obama? Well, of course, Rush Limbaugh. So Rush Limbaugh had one of the most obnoxious segments he has ever done on today's show. Now, that's a high bar to reach, right? Well, I think he passed it. He was talking about the kids that were at the signing ceremony that President Obama had today when he put his 23 executive orders on gun control in. And by the way, it is simply enforcing the laws we have now. There are no new laws. Very simple enforcement matter. It's not a big deal. And in fact, Republicans have not really objected to any of the substance of the 23 executive orders once they heard what they were, right? But not enough for Rush Limbaugh. He's going to make a totally over-the-top attack here.
But he's using these kids as human shields. Obama uses kids as human shields. The Democrats use kids as human shields. He brings these kids, supposedly who wrote letters to the White House after Newtown, bring them up there to present a picture of support among the children for the president to do something about guns. Very difficult to oppose it. You got these little kids there. They don't want to die. And how can you not listen to them? You've got to do something. That's the picture.
Yeah, because President Obama is the first president to have kids in signing ceremony, right? I'm sure George W. Bush or Ronald Reagan never did that. And I'm sure Rush Limbaugh's reaction was the same exact thing. Oh, wait a minute. Look at that. There are kids surrounding George W. Bush. Huh. How could he use them as human shields? I was against that law, but I couldn't do anything because he's got all those human shields. Now, why do they use the words human shields? Because that's, of course, what they accuse Saddam Hussein and, terrorists, etc., of doing. But yet, when Republican presidents do it, they're awesome and they're all American and they're kissing babies and shaking hands with Boy Scouts. Oh, my God, Ronald Reagan, watch out, it's a human shield. Ridiculous, right? But that's not anywhere near the biggest problem with what Rush Limbaugh said. When he was mocking the kids crying, worrying about getting shot in schools, you sick bastard. We just had 20 kids die there in Newtown. Have you no decency? I know that you don't. I know. But every once in a while, you begin to think like, isn't there a single cell in your body that says, hey, wait a minute, maybe I shouldn't mock kids who are worried about getting killed in school when the whole country just watched 20 innocent, beautiful, happy, healthy kids get mowed down. And we all cried over it, but we were human beings. I guess you're a different sort altogether, that you think that's a thing that should be mocked, that you think is funny. Just when you think that you've reached the bottom of the barrel with Rush Limbaugh, he comes up with a whole nother barrel and a whole nother bottom. There is no end to how despicable this guy is.
In the rewrite tonight, another episode of Republicans Say the Craziest Things, and Democrats don't. What you're about to hear are utterly insane things said by elected Republicans and a former Republican Attorney General. And this is not a case of both sides do it. There are no equally insane statements made by elected liberals in this country. When political media coverage tries to strike a neutral tone by saying both sides do it, in this case, that kind of attempt at neutrality actually produces a lie. Both sides are not saying insane things about gun rights and the Second Amendment. A newly elected crazy Republican Congressman, Steve Stockman, issued a press release about impeaching the president if he issues executive orders involving firearms. The best you could say about Stockman is that he issued an idiotic press release in order to get national media attention. Otherwise, how would anyone know he's a congressman? Again, He served 1 2-year term back in the 90s. The worst you could say about Stockman is that he issued an idiotic press release because he believes every word of the idiotic press release. Another Texas Republican, state legislator Steve Toth, is proposing legislation that would make any federal law banning semi-automatic firearms or limiting the size of gun magazines unenforceable in Texas. His proposed Firearm Protection Act would make it a felony to enforce a federal assault weapons ban in Texas, so he would be sending out Texas Rangers to arrest FBI agents or ATF agents or anyone who tried to enforce such a federal law. This, of course, could never happen and is patently unconstitutional. And again, the best thing that can be said about Steve Toth is that he's introducing his idiotic bill to get media attention, which we have just granted him. And the worst thing that can be said about Steve Toth is that he's introducing his idiotic bill because he does not know that it is an unconstitutional, idiotic bill. And here in New York State, a crazy Republican said some crazy stuff about the tough new gun control bill that Governor Cuomo just got through the legislature. Republican legislator Steve Katz really hates the ban on magazines that would hold more than 7 bullets.
I come to Albany proudly and voluntarily as a citizen legislator. I leave my wife and 3 young daughters home alone for days at a time to represent my constituents up here, far from home. After what happened to the young mother in Loganville, Georgia, who defended her 2 young children against an intruder, this bill will turn me into a criminal, because you can bet that before I leave to do the people's work, there will be more than 7 bullets in the magazine of my wife's firearm.
Okay, well, how about not taking a job where you have to leave your wife and 3 young daughters home alone for days at a time? How about that? Okay, a couple of things here. First of all, the young mother in Loganville, Georgia, he was just talking about, used a simple revolver against an intruder, a revolver that held only 6 bullets. She didn't need 7 or more than 7. Her bullets hit the intruder in the neck, face, and torso, producing 4 exit wounds. So she's not the case to use to prove why you need more than 7 bullets in your gun. A Republican who should know better is former Reagan administration Attorney General Edwin Meese. He, too, today is actually saying that President Obama could be impeached for issuing executive orders on firearms.
So if the president unilaterally overrides the Second Amendment via executive order, I mean, would this be constitutional? Would it be legal? And how should Congress respond?
Well, it would not be legal. It would not be constitutional. And indeed, if he tried to override the Second Amendment in any way, I believe it would be an impeachable offense. Okay,
I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, how many executive orders did President Reagan issue? And the answer is 381 with Ed Meese as his Attorney General. And I know some of you are thinking, who is that asking the questions? And the answer is, I have no idea. And some of you are thinking, who the heck is Ed Meese? Well, he is a well-educated man who went from Oakland High School to college at Yale and law school at Berkeley. He was very close to Ronald Reagan before and during the Reagan presidency. Reagan made him Attorney General, but Ed Meese was forced to resign that office in scandal. Ed Meese was Attorney General. He became one of the very few and very lucky guys who got to watch a lot of porn and get paid for it. In 1984, Reagan appointed Attorney General Meese to head the presidentially created Attorney General's Commission on Pornography, which meant that for 2 years, Ed Meese got to look at gay porn, straight porn, all the porn he could possibly get his hands on, which as Attorney General was a lot of porn. After drowning in porn for 2 years and getting paid for it, Ed Meese issued an almost 2,000-page report that reached this conclusion. Although the evidence may be slim, we nevertheless now know enough to conclude that pornography does represent a clear and present danger to American public health. Now, that's public health, not personal health, because Ed Meese is 81 years old and still going strong after we know he really buried himself in porn for a minimum of 2 years without hurting his personal health. And that was before a single pornographic image was available on the internet. So Ed Meese has played the clown before his current descent into doing interviews on right-wing websites. For some reason, Ed Meese did not get around to mentioning to his right-wing website interviewer that the president he worked for and worshipped, and the president who is worshipped by that right-wing website, Ronald Reagan, was in favor of an assault weapons ban. And if it seems like Texas Republicans have always been crazy on this subject, there's this.
I did think we ought to extend the assault weapons ban, and was told the fact that the bill was never going to move because Republicans and Democrats were against the assault weapon ban, people of both parties. Now, I believe law-abiding citizens ought to be able to own a gun. I believe in background checks at gun shows or anywhere to make sure that guns don't get in the hands of people that shouldn't have them.
And how many Texas Republicans thought that that Texas Republican should be impeached for saying he was in favor of an assault weapons ban and that he was in favor of background checks at gun shows? How many? Yeah. Republicans have gotten a lot crazier since then.
Professor James Tracy late tonight. Peter?
Well, Liz, I can tell you that professor spoke with us after his communications class tonight. He's worked here at FAU for 10 years, and he's no stranger to controversy. In the past, he's questioned the details of the JFK assassination. Most recently, he's questioned the details of the Colorado movie theater massacre. And now Sandy Hook is also being questioned by this professor. He says that the media, the national media specifically, isn't asking enough questions, and he's skeptical of authorities. He says there's the possibility that actors were actually brought in to Newtown to add drama to the story told to television news media. He also says there's the possibility that there were multiple shooters, even though police say that isn't true. And he also says there's the possibility that the number of people killed that day is incorrect. You had 20 families that were mourning, that buried children. Are you concerned about that at all?
Well, I think that the entire country mourned about Sandy Hook, and yet once again the investigation that journalistic institutions should have actually carried out never took place, as far as I'm concerned.
There's a lot of emotion involved with something like this. Is there anything that you want to say to that person at home that's going to throw their shoe at the TV and say, this guy is a total nut?
Well, I think that we need to, as a society, look at things more carefully. Perhaps we, as a society, have been conditioned to be do